Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and I'm Eric Taylor, and welcome to yet another wonderful episode of Storyteller Studio. Tonight, we are joined by the usual cast of miscreants, also my green screen because I'm in a new studio and my lighting sucks, so I'll probably turn it off. But we have a very special guest who we will introduce right at the end because you need to hear more about them than us. So, like I said, I'm Eric Taylor. We're going to start today with Chantel B.
Hi, I'm Chantel B. You can find me at Chantel B on Twitter. You can also find me here most days of the week, apart from one day where you can find me at Roll Society. Who knew?
Very true. Dropping down. Matt.
Hey, y'all. This is Matt. I am findable at Twitter, so at orcish1_83. I play Hawk in The Stars That Bind. Hopefully you join us on Friday to catch some of that.
Also true. Stars That Bind is back on Friday, so be excited for that. It's only been like a month. We're going to go up to the resident game beast of Do Respite, Sarah.
Hi, I'm Sarah, and you can find me ignoring my new Twitter. Because apparently people think I didn't have enough with just one. No, it's switched now.
Yeah.
Anyway, I'm excited to be here.
And this evening we have a very special guest, someone I'm quite pleased to have on, the one and only Super Dylan. Diana, tell us a little bit about you, what you do, where we can find you, who you are, that sort of thing.
Okay. So that's a big question because I do too much is the answer. I'm Diana. I do quite a lot locally as well as online. Locally here in New York City and in the greater New York City area, I do convention organizing, game event organizing, and professional GMing in the area. With a particular emphasis on running queer spaces for local gamers. Online, I make funny jokes about gaming. And then also, the biggest thing that I think that I am doing right now is I have written a Neverland setting for D&D 5th edition that is being play tested right now on Welcome to the Party on Twitch and will be released when that playtest stage is done. So you can find me in all my antics everywhere on the internet at Super Dylan, as it is spelled in front of you. And that's it.
Alrighty. Awesome. So tonight, when I put out an open call and I said, hey, I need cool people who want to come guest on our show. And Diana was the first person to respond saying, yes, I would love to guest on your show. And I looked at Diana's Twitter and I went, you have so many followers. Why do you want to guest on our show? That was my first reaction. My second reaction was to click on Diana's YouTube link and watch Diana's great video on Session Zero. And I thought to myself, I don't do Session Zero, which now means Diana doesn't trust me from that moment based on her YouTube video. But
I did say that, didn't I?
You did, right at the very beginning. And I have done Session Zero in the past, but I said, you know what? Let's have Diana come on and talk about Session Zero. So that's what we're going to talk about tonight. We're going to do a little bit of a format difference based on some feedback. I'm going to ask more questions. I'm going to talk slightly less because I've been told I talk too much. Let's jump to Sarah first. What's Session Zero to you? As you have a primary GM who Dan doesn't trust because he doesn't run it.
Okay, so yeah, we normally don't have what would be considered in our group a typical Session Zero. But But we do have like a couple weeks leading up to game where we talk about what kind of campaign we want to run. And there'll be a flurry of text messages going back and forth. And then we eventually take a poll. And then once we get that settled, we're like, okay, I think I want to do a character kind of like this. And someone will text there. I think I'm going to do something. So we have like over a week or two, a span of text messages going back and forth, figuring out all that kind of session 0 stuff. And then because usually it's people that we've played with before, we've already had where we've let you know our lines and veils. And so if you don't know what that means, we can cover probably in more detail in a minute, but stuff you're uncomfortable with. And so for our session 0s, it's not like we all sit down together and talk things through, but we do exchange that information that gets exchanged in a session 0.
Makes sense. So who wants to jump in and chat a little bit more about what a session 0 is to you? Go ahead, Matt.
Yeah, so I have found session 0 to be very useful, particularly when I was really new to gaming, where we could say, okay, this is the idea of the adventure we're running. These are the characters, and this is how they fit. That was really helpful for me. Lines and veils, I think, is an essential topic for session 0. So lines meaning those things that definitely make you uncomfortable, like a hard line, and veils, those things that you might encounter or see in game, but you don't want to really be a part of, right?
But off camera.
Yeah. And so that has been useful for me. I know that there are people that have run around the table where I play, I'll call it Eric's table because that's typically the case, that have had significant lines. I've had a couple of veils to bring up, and that helps us to maintain a really cohesive gameplay. And you know that I'm a character and story kind of guy. Combat is less appealing to me, and so being able to gel a lot of the character and story stuff, I really enjoy. So hopefully I'm not getting too ahead of things, Eric, and saying I even at some point get a little bit in character toward the end of session 0 because I'm vibing with who that character is going to be.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I mean, it's freeform, sit around a couch, table, library if you're Sarah and Chantel, and chat. So let's hear a little bit from the other two. Talk to me about the general purpose of session 0 to you. Either of you.
Okay, I'll go. Session 0 for me is all of those things that we've said, the lines and the veils. To me, it's also that chance to have a bit of world building. And for me, that's where I understand what my lines and my veils are going to be for the upcoming campaign generally as well, because without knowing what kind of a world we're walking into, is it a gritty, dark world? Is it going to be a really light world? I don't know, number one, what kind of a character I want to build, or what kind of things that it's almost like my lines and veils shift based on the sort of story that's being told. Like there are some games where, child menacing won't be a problem, but there are others where I'm like, actually, this particular subject matter, don't touch it at all for anything, for any reason at all. So in terms of those lines and veils, I've had very little experience of them because the people I play with are my friends or have been close friends, and they kind of, know those traumas already because I talk to them about them. But then when it comes to certain things, like the difference is the context of the world that we're in, more so than than having across the board lines and veils.
Mm-hmm.
And building a character, like that also happens in a session 0, or building the personality and knowing what how your character is going to interact with the other characters in the world.
Yeah. So Sarah, I actually think that text format, where you're texting each other back and forth over a couple of weeks, can be most of, if not all of, what accounts for a session 0. It doesn't necessarily need to happen all in one place in person. I do think, and this is, so my experience was that when I first started playing tabletop games for years, played with the same group of friends, all close, all people that I knew very well, um, for years, never did a session zero, never did any of those things. And over time, like one person leaves, one person comes back in, one person brings a significant other, that person stays, they break up, one leaves, the other one stays. Like the group is a long-term playing group, but it shifts over time. In addition to that, over that time frame, I changed. I, became more out, like aware of social justice things, in a way that the rest of the people at the table hadn't. Things started to bother me, or I became aware of things that bothered me more over time. And we would play game after game. There would never be any sort of reset button where everybody would check in with one another in any sort of way. And I think a session zero is like a real easy kind of way to do that, even, which is why I even recommend it for groups that have played together for a long time. You're basically taking a little bit of a reset button to check in and see, like, have we all changed our feelings on something? Maybe we can take this beat and revisit and see if we want something different, whether it's something serious like a new line or veil, or if it's something more like, we don't want to play another gritty game, we're tired. Let's play. let's do a something lighthearted for a change, or whatever the case may be. It's just a chance to hear from everyone out of character about what they want and how they feel, and to just check in.
Oh, for sure. I think that is something, as we talk about, as the individual who puts out that text message conversation and then loses control of it and ends up playing a very different game than the one I pitched. As the longtime GM, that happens all the time. There is always kind of a check-in on tone in those things, right? Like, we have played Sarah games where you have a very specific subset of where dark is okay and where dark is not. And I run a very different game for you and a group you're involved in that I run for 95% of anyone else I run for, because I run dark stories. That's my writing style. That's my play style. That's what I gear toward. So I think there's always that check-in of, hey, like, we're going to play this. Okay, where does the darkness meter go? Because you also have had games where your darkness meter can go a little bit, darker than it does with other things. So I do think that has factored in as Diana talks through it. Let's talk a little bit about some individual, unless somebody, yes.
Before we move on, can I say session zero, the fact that you just brought that up about the shifting of, that darkness meter, it reminds me also that session zero isn't just the beginning of the campaign. Like, session zeros should probably happen straight through, because things change as life changes. So when I say session zero, I don't mean so much session zero as just like check-ins, which is something that you absolutely do after every game. You just check in and see where we are all at as players. And that's sort of the other side to session zero, is the post check-in.
Yeah. And I think that session zero very much inherently ties itself in with safety tools as a thing, which I will admit I'm new to as a GM. I didn't grow up with safety tools. I've played in a lot of games that didn't have safety tools. It is a very new thing in the community, in terms of they are published, but in terms of like hey, this is a thing you need to do with your group. And it's a thing that I didn't realize how important it was until I started playing with different groups of people, until I started experiencing things we can talk a little bit about, and that's where we're going to jump to, is the experiences that have either gone really well with a session 0, where it's been this great thing that has made a campaign function that may not have otherwise functioned, and I have some examples of that in my head, or an example where a session 0 was a problem, because I have been in those situations as well personally, where a session 0 had issues that came from it. Not issues in terms of anybody's ability, but like I've had games end in a session 0 because it has been like, oh, this just won't work. Okay, we need to retool this. And as the GM who's done a lot of that planning, that's not always awesome, to be honest.
No, but I've had that experience too. I would much rather it end at the session 0 than to have everybody, think I'm getting, a campaign going, and to have everybody show up for one game, and then 2 people don't show up for the next one, 3 people don't show up for the next one, and everybody's gone because something just wasn't working. I'd rather know right off the bat.
And I definitely agree. Once you look at it, especially in retrospect, it's a lot better. But in that moment, it wasn't fun to be like, oh, hey, look, here's all this stuff.
For sure.
So go ahead, Matt.
Yeah. Something you mentioned regarding Darkness Meter, it was an interesting experience for me in a game you were planning where I think Sarah and I were both going to participate, and it was the pitch was division. So there's an infection going throughout New York City, and so there's factions all trying to survive. And for me, I said, that sounds dark, but it's okay because it's based on a real world scenario, like a possible real world scenario. And tell me, Sarah, if I'm putting words in your mouth, but I think that was one thing that made it less appealing for you, is that it is kind of real life-ish.
That was Katie.
Oh, was that Katie?
That was Katie.
I'm mixing folks up, but
different.
Like the qualifications on what makes something too dark or too difficult can be opposite for different players around the table. So I thought that was really interesting in a session 0 that we had.
Yeah, and for context on that, this is a player who, it was all about the horror elements of a game. We had played a very dark, twisted version of Ghostbusters previous to that, and had very, dark, horrific kind of experiences in that game too. We have an audio recording out there that someday I want to tweak and post-process and put out, where there's literally a moment where I'm describing something and the air conditioner kicks on outside the window and you hear all 5 players actually jump on the microphone, because that was where we were at. But then we pitched this division game and everyone was all on board right until Katie came, and they're like, no, I watched the primers that you sent and I'm out. Like, I won't do this. And that shocked me, but that was fine. We moved past it. I have an example, and then we'll jump around and talk a little bit more, of an example where not having a session 0 was really, really bad. And I think I've talked about it a little bit on the channel before, but I got invited to play in a Vampire the Masquerade game. And I went to go play in this Vampire the Masquerade game, went and met people in what I thought was kind of session 0, but we didn't discuss anything. Just met these people, showed up at their house to learn that this was a swingers club that I hadn't been invited to participate in. And it was something they were doing through roleplay. And I had no interest. I didn't want to be there. And I excused myself and left. And if that had been explained in a session 0, I could have been like, no, sorry, I'm not about this. And it wasn't. It was something I didn't find out until about 15 minutes into the first session. At least, thank heavens, it was just 15 minutes. But that was a thing where it actually was what cemented to me, hey, I need to do session 0. And then we fell out of the habit because we had a local game group who felt like session 0, because we only got together every other week and we were only ever together for 3.5 hours. Session Zero was a waste of a session for a group of people who were making huge life sacrifices with spouses and with children and with work and stuff to be there. They didn't want to spend a session on Session Zero. And so we fell out of the habit because of that. But let's talk to the rest of you about some really good Session Zeros or some not so great Session Zeros. Let's start with Diana this time.
Yeah. So the first time I really wanted to have a Session Zero was after I broke away from that group of friends where it had gotten so bad over the years where it was just like, my character was, in a D&D style universe being targeted with like things that were deeply like known to be personal to me. And I felt like at this point, it's like, I've never said anything before. I can't say anything now. We're not in that kind of relationship where we say things like that to each other. So once I got away from that and decided I really wanted to play again, this was also when I decided, you know what, I had previously been too shy to GM. Crazy to me to think that like now that's all I do. But before that, I had never done that. And I was like, you know what? If I want a game to be a safe and good place, I'm going to do it myself. And that was 3 years ago. I put a post on my local Reddit and I said, help, I'm new to the area. I need a game and I need it now. And a group of boys messaged me. Actually, one guy messaged me and was like, hey, I promised my friends I'd run a campaign and I'm too scared. So if you do it, you can be our friend. We're all in our 30s. That's cool. So this is the first time I insisted on doing a Session Zero. And it was so, I think that people think it has to be a serious thing, but it was so fun. We hung out, we had a couple of beers, we had chips and snacks, just like any other session. We nerded out over like everybody's character concepts when they arrived, and then figuring out like where they fit in the world was like a big nerd session. Like you tell me your character concepts, I'll tell you how they fit in this world. Like we'll figure this puzzle out together. And we then started having little laughs, like joking about what their characters are going to probably be like, laughing about like, oh, I bet he's going to, just want to throw punches. He's going to get so annoyed when this one wants to, go shopping for healing potions. Like just, little jabs that were already being made, jokes that were already being made. And just generally dorking out and, through the entire process. And by the end of it, we were all friends. Like we're a group of people I never met before. A group of people who generally all didn't really know each other very well. I think that there's a perception that a Session Zero has to be like a PowerPoint slide and like everybody like goes through these, very serious documents. And then at the end you sign a contract to make sure nobody crosses any lines. But it's really just like, it's just a group discussion. It's just a brainstorming session. That's really what it is. And it's just there to make things better. So I've been with that group now. That's been my home game for 3 years now. And they're, indispensable and disposable people in my life. And I kind of knew it in that one moment.
Mm-hmm. I'm gonna pick on you a little bit, Shawnee. Talk to me about Somerset Session Zero, because we went into that game and you weren't sold on that game. You were pretty much ready going into that game to say, nah, I'm not doing this.
I mean, that was pre-session 0, though. We didn't even get to
Right.
session 0, and I was like, is
Right.
this for me?
But session 0 to me, and I mean, and I might be wrong, and that's fair, but session 0 to me was where we sold you on the game, because I gave you a pitch that was a little bit more detailed than what I'd given you before.
Yeah.
But then session 0, I feel like, is what solidified Somerset for you to be a game now that you are excited for every week.
What's the question? Is there a question? What?
I mean, tell me.
Just talk about Somerset.
Just talk about it.
Just
Pimp
talk
my
about this
game.
thing. Pimp the game. You know, it's a great game. I love it. I have so much fun every week.
See?
I get, you know, I enjoy stress. I enjoy certain levels of trauma because that's who I am. And for me, being able to say that in session 0, actually, you know, I'm using the voice, but like, I'm serious. Like, to be able to say, you know, as part of my session 0 information, I want to feel things make me feel. To be able to do that and then, you know, have the GM go, okay, here we go, is really helpful, especially since that was the thing that about Somerset that I struggled with, because I'm someone that gets very much into the character. I'm someone that gets very much into like the lives of the characters more so than, as we've discussed before, big set pieces. Not so interesting to me. I'm a psychologist. I like the psychological inner workings of what's going on in these characters. So for me, it's like, for me to be sold on the game, I needed to know that my needs were going to be met in terms of the way that I like to tell stories, and the idea of, you know, superheroes, pow! Like, I was expecting comic book superheroes, and that's not what I got, and that's not what was on offer. But until I knew that, I was like, oh, see, what is this? Tell me everything.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So, what about
Yes.
Matt and Sarah? Or also more Chantel, or even more Diana? Anybody who wants to talk, because that's what we do here. We just talk to you. Talk more about a session 0 that either did exactly that, sold you on a game, backed you out of a game, or helped you build into a game that you were more hesitant about.
Hopefully I'm not stepping on toes. I remember a couple of session 0 type of conversations that we had for your local game. There was a little bit of turnover in folks that were going to participate in that local game, and we were trying to find the right fit. And some of it was, okay, let's talk about the adventure that we want to run. And then through that process, we learned there's actually just people who don't want the same things out of game. And so there was partings of ways and things like that. But it was, I feel like having those conversations helped us to end up at the optimal end state, rather than trying to keep people with vastly different needs around the same table. We were able to say, okay, we understand what's going on and we're cool with it, so we'll just kind of take the natural route and make the most fun for the most number of people. And those things will occasionally have to happen. I'm glad that they did, because the couple of sessions we had where people were either checked out or trying to steer the game their way or whatever, they were a little bit painful. And so having that session 0 about this adventure isn't working, what one will, and then realizing it's less about the adventure and more about individual needs, really helped.
I mean, and I'll throw you under the bus. We had a session 0 before a game. You and I did, and you said, hey, my schedule in life has changed. I can't do 2 game groups anymore. I got to do 1.
Mm-hmm.
Which one do I do? In your opinion, as my GM, as someone who understands my character motivations and understands my gaming motivations, where do I go? And I said, I love having you drive the 10 minutes and come hang out in my house. I love having you around. That's not the game group you belong in. You belong in the online one. And that was part of a session 0 for a new campaign that was starting, because I have this tendency for you all to stop playing campaigns at the same time and make me come up with everything new all at once. And so we were able to reassign you. And I think, if I'm honest, I think you are a happier gamer now because of that session 0 than you would have been continuing where you were. Shawnee, you were gonna say something.
I also wanted to touch on the idea. I mean, it's jumping around a little bit, but it's in my head. I wanted to touch on the idea that a session 0, it's jumping to internet shows, which, I mean, we just discussed a little bit of with Matt. So session 0 for
Freeform couch
Durespit.
discussion.
Yeah, let's sit on a couch and just discuss. One of the things that interests me about Durespit is the holding of one-shots to see how new players will integrate with the players that already exist on the channel. And I think that is basically a long-form one-shot. Long-form one-shot, that's a campaign. A long-form session 0.
I like that, though.
Long-form one-shot.
Yeah.
Done.
Stars that bind.
But
long-form one-shot.
It's just a long-form one-shot. But it is. And, it's just about, that's a session 0, but, testing out personalities and play styles and all of those things, which could come into just a session. I say just a session 0, but it could be a session 0 where we discuss lines and veils, or you can come with the full characters and see how the people interact and the way that they build characters and things like that as well. Mm-hmm. And in terms of, I only ever get to see people through the internet. I feel like it's quite good to have that gaming experience. So at least I can go, oh, we're playing a campaign. Oh, I don't know you at all.
And it's interesting because that has become part of my repertoire of unusual session 0 tactics. Is I do two things. There is a survey that I have on Google Docs that I send out called, "So you want me to run your game?" And it's a list of, what is it now, 18 questions? And it's a substantial survey. And it's things like, hey, do you commit to somewhat learning the rules? I'm very careful not to say read the rules because I haven't done that, so I'm not going to make you do it. But what are some of your favorite movies? What are some of your favorite scenes in movies? Who are some of your favorite authors? Because I want to tell a story with you that you care about. And if you come to me and say, well, my favorite authors are this list of romance people and I've never read a single action fantasy book, I'm probably not the right GM for you. Like, this is going to be a struggle. We need to find you someone better suited because you should roleplay, but you need to find someone who's more on your level and more doing what you want. The other one is now one-shots. But one of the things we talked about in one-shots versus campaigns last week that I have thought about all week long now is there's a reason I use pre-gens and one-shots, because that gives me a chance and gives the other people around a chance to see you act something that's outside of your comfort zone. I tend to assign them because I know the people for the most part that I'm bringing in. So I tend to assign out characters and I'm like, let's see you do this, because this will put you off axis enough without making you have a breakdown that someone will get to know you. And go ahead. I saw the Chantel intake of breath.
Oh no, I have a tell. But then does that not cause then a little bit of confusion? Because the second someone creates a character that they if someone creates a character that they, not that they want to play, I mean, yes, they want to play the character, that's why they build them, but self-created versus pre-gen, there's a thought, and it's struggling to get out. My
answer to the thought I think you're having is that the number of times I've had people sit down and create themselves with everything either toned down to 1 or amped to 11, or create the polar opposite of themselves so it's just super easy for them to play. I've had that happen so many times that I don't feel like you get to see the way a person role plays, which is just because there are people I like a lot in this world. I do not want to play tabletop role-playing games with them. I like them. I don't want to role play with them. I want to see somebody role play. And so that's my reasoning behind the way I do Session Zero with pre-gens. And I think that's a whole different episode that we can have before we go off onto that tangent, unless somebody else has thoughts. I see Diana kind of doing the Diana intake of breath, which is not quite as sharp as Chantel's.
No, mine's more like a slow lean back and then I exhale. So I actually, when I do one shots, I basically do a one shot, especially now, exactly the same way I would do a one shot at a convention. So you're operating under the circumstance that there's not going to be any session zero. There's going to be very little time before any gaming happens. You want to be able to jump in as fast as possible. That's why for one shots, I do pre-gen, or I do games that have very quick generation of characters. A lot of Grant Howitt's games are my go-to one-shot games. Anything where you can gen a character in the minute to 5 minutes before a game, and it, you can just jump in from there. In those cases, the use of X cards and consent checklists is, like, for a one shot, more important to me than it is in a campaign. Because I feel like in a campaign, you get this like open line of communication. You got like this session zero where everybody gets to say their feelings and, voice concerns, limits, etc. One shot, you're kind of, the whole point is that everybody's coming together and trying to have a spontaneous play, and 99% of the time no one needs to enact anything, but you want to make sure it's like all there just in case, in that case.
Mm-hmm. And I absolutely agree with you. It's so far we've only run one shots on Do Respite with people that I know, but given people that I would bring in who I don't know, there would be a mini session zero, because I wouldn't be like, hey, come play tonight. I only do that to Frito because I've known Frito for 20 years. But other people would be like, hey, this is the kind of game. This is the content. Are you down? Because I'm not running on conventions, I'm running on Do Respite, right? And so I've had to build a set for you. I need you to be here. I can't be like, oh yeah, by the way, this is the kind of game that we're running. Oh, you're not okay with that. That's a problem. So that's something that I do a little bit differently there, but I 100% agree that it's like a convention game. This is a possibility the only time you'll ever see some of these people, because they may not fit. So I definitely agree there. Let's talk about that whole chat interaction between Vera and Chantel. Just broke my brain. I don't know what's going on. But let's talk a little bit about that. Let's segue into internet shows as a thing. Scraticus does not stream Session Zero. It's just part of policy. Session Zero is not streamed. Yeah. I streamed Somerset City's Session Zero. Last Wednesday, we did not stream Eternium Gates Session Zero. Now, admittedly, that was actually just because I was dying. And I had zero interest in being on camera. I had nothing to do with anything else. I was just dead. When it comes to an internet game, personal preference, there is no right or wrong answer here. This is a bunch of friends, and Diana, you're now our friend, so welcome to that circle, of friends sitting around talking, stream session 0 or not?
No, I wouldn't.
Just because of the lines and veils content, or
I
for
don't
other
ever
reasons?
want, well, even beyond lines and veils,
Mhm.
when you're streaming. So now, as much as I have as much fun in my streamed campaigns as I do in my home campaigns. However, we're all on.
Mm-hmm.
You know, when you're streaming a campaign, everybody has an awareness, whether it's overt or not, that they are performing. There's a level of performance there. And as soon as you turn on that camera, you may subconsciously or otherwise tone down, change, alter what you actually want because you know you're on. And for me as a GM, I would just feel more comfortable, like feeling like I know that my players are able to be totally honest with me and not feeling like there's any sort of pressure happening from the sense that they're being filmed at that time, just so that when we then get to jump in to the live show, it just takes worry off my shoulders. I don't have to worry that they're engaging in something that maybe they don't really actually love. It helps me as well in that.
I agree. Yeah,
Mhm.
that's admittedly not something that I have considered, but no, I totally agree with you.
Mhm.
Matt, you unmuted. I saw it. Go.
Yeah. My creative process involves a lot of trial and error. And so, from my perspective, the entertainment value of doing a session 0, when I'm kind of throwing things against the wall and seeing what sticks as far as character and interactions and things like that, it may create a little bit of a disjointed experience for the viewer where they're like, okay, is Daktareth a funny guy or a mean guy or an adventuresome guy?
He was
Because
never a funny guy.
oh, he was always funny. You just didn't get it. And so all of that stuff, it happens. It's a brainstorming, cutting room floor type of experience. And so I don't necessarily see it as allowing cohesion in the eyes of the viewer and or entertainment value.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, some of it's fun. But it's only fun when it's authentic, and being on kind of stifles that just a little bit.
Okay. So, because I see Sarah doing that look where it's the don't talk to me look.
No, I can contribute this time.
Go for it. I love when you contribute. It's my favorite thing that you do.
Okay, so like I said, for most of the games that I've been in, we don't have a sit down face to face, all talking together session 0. So when we were going to do that on Somerset City, because I'm on that one as well, I was like, yeah, this is cool. We're all gonna hang out and figure out what we're doing, and we already did some like the lines and veils and some of that stuff that could be embarrassing to do streamed. And I've watched some stream session 0s and I was entertained. So from an entertainment point of view, I would watch those things. I have watched those things. But now that I have been on the other side of it, where you're the person that everyone is watching, it wasn't as great as I thought it was going to be. I found that I enjoyed talking to the other people I'm playing with on that kind of behind the scenes character creation and all of that. I enjoyed that a lot better when we did that off camera, whenever we would just talk about it off camera. Because for me, being on camera, there's always pressure. Like it always makes me nervous. And so doing all that character stuff that the little bit that we had done off character was a blast and that was fun. But trying to sit there and then do it on camera, there was a pressure there that I hadn't expected that really didn't make it all that much fun. I mean, I enjoy playing our games, even though I'm nervous, but for some reason doing session 0 on the camera, it wasn't I didn't enjoy it like I thought I would.
Yep.
There's something interesting about that I think from an acting perspective, I fully understand. It's kind of the idea that, you know, I have a 4-week rehearsal period, and if at the end of that 4-week rehearsal period going into a performance, I'm not ready to be on stage, and the something about the director has not quite got the show ready, or I don't have my lines fully down and I just kind of have managed to skate through till now, I'm not comfortable and I don't want anyone to see that. So it becomes nerve-wracking for other people to see it. But on the other hand of that, the nature of the other side of that is TTRPGs are long form improvisation and playing around with the idea of, like, I walked into the session 0 of Somerset City with 0 character. I had no character at the beginning of that stream. And by the end of that stream, I was playing around with accent, not knowing what the character was going to sound like, but I'd vaguely settled on a personality for it. And I feel like from an entertainment perspective, I think being able to see that change is quite an interesting thing. And from a performance perspective, it was, I mean, I've already said that I enjoy the trauma, so maybe that's my problem. But it becomes about, you know, being able to go, hey, audience, what do you want to see? Like
Yeah.
how would this experience resonate with you?
I think it's a very cool thing to let people see. I just think that many people wouldn't be able or wouldn't feel comfortable, or that I guess my worry is that they would stifle a little bit of their honesty for the sake of the audience, and that's part of what my worry would be. But I think it is objectively, I think it's an interesting thing to allow somebody to kind of peek behind the camera and see that, like, the session 0 happen. Yeah,
So,
I think that's
And
cool.
I fully agree with you in terms of it being nerve-wracking and that it's not for everyone. I think it would come down to, you know, checking in with the people that you're going to be playing with and saying, do you want this on stream? Because there'd be some people that I'd imagine, some groups of people that would really enjoy it. And in that case, it might be, you know, just an individual chat with people to just see where they're at before going, hey, let's stream it now.
I think what Do Respite's going to do going forward is we're going to do session 0 and session 0.5, which will bring us into our next topic. Which our next topic, as we close out our show, is roleplay during session 0. In that video where Diana established that she doesn't trust me at the very beginning because I didn't run session 0. I do now, so you can begin to trust me now. But at the time, I did not. We talk about, specifically, you talk about at the end of that video, how a session 0 ends on roleplay. And that doesn't, in the case of Savage Worlds specifically, no, I'm not shilling Savage Worlds, it's just what I play. Audience, is that you don't have to have our Somerset City session 0, Blue, and Space Boy and Chantel did not have created characters. Jeff and Sarah did because they've made a lot of them, but the other 3 did not. We still roleplayed through a session 0 because you don't necessarily have to roll dice to do all of the roleplay as long as you just don't put dice rolling situations there. My thought is, what if you do a session 0 that is your lines and veils and is your character expectations and is your world building and is your all of that? Then you break either for a week or for 10 minutes or whatever. And you come back for that stream game and you play session 0.5. You do your role play now on stream. Because in the case of Somerset City, if that game had not been streamed, 90% of what's happening on camera now doesn't make sense. Because the catalyst for you guys' current suffering storm would not have been known to the audience. I feel like Stars That Bind suffers from the fact that our prequel, session 0/1-ish, wasn't on camera. So there's whole things that people don't know that get referenced in game. So as someone, Diana, who always includes roleplay in your session 0, as it is a statement in your YouTube video.
Okay.
What are your thoughts on a session 0 and a session 0.5 for a streamed game specifically?
I have two thoughts. My first thought is that the role play that I do at the end of session 0 is very limited. No plot. It's just you're all in a tavern, talk to each other. It's a feel out your characters kind of get a voice, find a voice. Maybe I throw one little weird scenario at you. You witness something happen in a bar. What is your reaction to seeing a waitress get robbed? What's your reaction to seeing a drunken brawl happen in the corner? Just to see how the different characters react. If that guy over there says that he's a lawful good, and the second I say that a waiter dropped his coin purse, he's thinking that he's going to steal it. I'm like, do you really? Maybe we didn't fully flush that out. It's a way for me to see them try to act the characters they thought of on paper and see if it matches up. However, I think you could do a whole session off camera and it wouldn't matter. And the reason I know that that's possible is because Critical Role is the biggest show in TTRPG history, and they played for years before streaming, and Vox Machina references stuff that we'll never see, that the comic book is only just starting to tell us, and nobody had any sort of problem picking up and feeling all that trauma from a 30-second intro. You don't have to see every second of these stories. Give your audience more credit than that. They'll pick up on the nuances between the characters, little references. They'll be like, I mean, a fan of a show, their instinct is to be like, what was that? That's the thing, and hone in on it. I think that it's definitely not necessary in any means to do a role play, within the session 0. I think you can totally do the 0.5. I think that's actually an excellent idea. But if you want to do it all in one, I don't think you're missing anything by leaving that out of the stream. I don't think the audience is missing anything if you choose to do it that way. I think it's just a fun way to explore what your characters actually sound like, feel like, act like, etc.
No, makes sense. Anybody else on session 0, session 0.5, session 0 streamed, session 0 not streamed? Any other closing thoughts in general on session 0? Because we may be able to get Sarah out of here before she turns into a pumpkin. We might. And heaven forbid, I don't know how Diana's alive, because it's an hour later even where she is. So, any other thoughts before we go into closing, almost like closing arguments, like this is a presidential, any closing arguments from the cast?
Oh, if we're already in closing, I almost hate to bring this up, but session 0 is also a good time to mention your kind of social contracts, like your ideas of how do I put this? How do you prioritize game night? Like, for you, are you just coming to hang out? Are you going to be constantly on your phone all the time while we're playing? Because that, for those of us who came to role play, that's going to bug me. Are you going to be, because I play a lot of games online, I've only ever played games in person at one convention, so are you going to be constantly looking at your computer screen and I can see like the light flashing off your face, and then when it's your turn to talk, or maybe my character talked to you and you're ignoring me because you're playing your game, You know, are we constantly gonna have to bring your attention back to the game when it's your turn? So kind of those expectations of, are you always going to be late? Are you going to show up on time? Is this game important to you? Because I've been looking forward to it all week. And when something's gone wrong with my kids or something, you know, that's just been like, oh, I'm so grumpy today. Oh, but we get to play this weekend. Yay! You know, so you can bring up those things of how important is this game to you? What kind of are you wanting a role play game, or just we're gonna hang out and chat and sometimes we get around to the game? Those kind of things can be brought up in a session 0.
I love to hear Sarah's ferocity in defense of game night, and knowing that I am part of what makes game night possible when we're doing Stars That Bind, you know, it makes me kind of proud. I agree. Definitely conversations about prioritization are necessary. You know, I'm a family man and a career dude, kind of a working stiff. So those couple of things combined with some church assignments and all of that, it makes my life a little bit full. Knowing that the commitment that I'm going to bring to game night, Sarah also brings and others bring who game around the same table. You know, it's a privilege to participate with folks who give it that same priority.
Yeah, and I agree. As a GM who has had to institute the basket at the door for the cell phone because it's your turn. Can you please stop texting? It's your turn. Can we not get another reference for it's your turn? Oh, why are we listening to a YouTube video that came up in a joke 10 minutes ago? Right? There's a big set of that social contract there. And my local group, as Matt can vouch, and I'm not trying to be rude to them at all if they're watching. I love you guys. You know, that's why we still play. They're a come and hang out group. That's what they do. We get together every other week for a couple hours and we hang out and we snack and we joke and we laugh and we maybe role play for 90 minutes of our 4 hours, right? And that's fine because that's what we've established as the social contract for that game. On an online game, especially if you're like streaming on Do Respite or on Critical Role or on Encounter or on Saving Throw Show or anyone else, that social contract probably is very different. That social contract is you're here and we're here to play and we're here to game. And with this local group, we had some situations this past week where we had to be online. For the first time ever, we had to be online. We gamed for 3 hours and we didn't joke around once. It was weird. I didn't know what to do with myself. I had never had to create that much story for that group in one night ever. And so it's interesting to me, and I think that's a conversation is online versus in person. So somebody please add that to the episode list that we'll talk about. But I think that that's an incredibly important part of Session 0 that I do think gets overlooked is what is your commitment to game night? What is your commitment to this group? Because we're all putting something aside that we could be doing, whether it's friends, it's family, it's a dog, it's a cat, it's a nap. It's whatever. You have sacrificed something to be here. I need to know that you're on the same page as me, that we're going to sacrifice, not that we're going to sacrifice to the same level, but that you're going to respect my sacrifice.
Yeah. And I think it's also interesting because you can, that can be with the same group of people in 2 different games. That's allowed to be 2 different things. You're allowed to have a mess around game where there's no stakes and, you know, everybody's just goofing, and one where people cry at the end of the session, you know, like you're allowed to have those 2, you know.
Yep.
Or any parameters.
Yep. I agree with you. So she's going to turn into a pumpkin, but that's fine. That was an important thing to get out, and I appreciate that you brought it up. And since Sarah said it, maybe that will hold off pumpkin sorcery. But we're going to just go do your closing thoughts on Session 0 like we do here, and then we'll do outros. We're going to start with Matt.
I like Session 0 because I love character and story helps them mesh and gel. So that's my plug. And find me at Orcish1_83 whenever you feel like it.
Can we get an official vote in chat to get Matt to change his Twitter handle to @RPCareerDude
Great.
or
That
@RP
could-
Working Stiff, because you mention that every single episode. So I think you ought to be.
Dude.
I'm staying on brand. I
Yeah.
don't know that I like the brand that I'm building, but hey, it is a brand. so.
It's a great brand. I like your brand. Mostly I like you, so I like your brand by definition. Shawnee B.
I will always vote for healthy communication, and I will always vote for a session 0, and I will always vote for session 0 ongoing. So session, technically it's like session
0.25?
10, session 20, session like all the session zeros. Just constantly communicate with your players and your GMs and your storytellers and your DMs and all of those other names. Just constant communication is great, and that's where I sit forever. My name is Chantel B, and you can find me at Chantel
We're
B
not doing
on
that
Twitter.
part yet.
I thought we were. He
No.
said Orcish won.
I know, but we're not doing that part yet.
Okay, fine. Don't find me at Chantel B.
I mean, please go find her at Chantel B, but wait until she
No,
introduces
I don't. No, you said it's not time. Don't do it.
Sarah.
I'm a bad example. Sorry.
It's okay. We forgive you. It's because you're a RP Working Stiff.
Mm-hmm. Career dude.
Sarah, thoughts on session 0?
I think session 0s are great. You should have them in whatever form works best for you and your group, whether it's a really formal session 0 or whether it's a really informal session 0. Whatever works best for your group, you should have them because they're awesome.
And our wonderful guest, who we have been thrilled to have, Diana.
I'm a fan of session 0, and I also think as Sarah does, that it doesn't have to be any particular way. It just needs to cover everyone's needs and bases, whether it's in one meeting or over text or whatever, as long as everyone's needs are met.
As for my thoughts, I've learned a lot tonight that I didn't know, which is always a great thing. Have made some mental alterations. We didn't have any mental altercations. That did not happen. But we did have some mental alterations to the way I will run things for Do Respite going forward, quite specifically. So thanks so much to everybody here. Now, Chantel, it's time to go around the circle, and you can say where you can be followed and then plug anything you want to plug. But we're not starting with you. We're going to start with Sarah.
Hi, I'm Sarah. You can find me ignoring my Twitter at RP Game Piece. I'm going to have to get used to it now. Dang it, I'm used to saying Sarah No Tweet. You can find me at RP Game Beast. Sort of. My husband might check it and relay anything you send there. Watch me on Friday on The Stars That Bind, because it's awesome. And then watch me again on Saturday, because it's awesome too.
Now it's your turn, Chantel.
I don't know if I want to go now.
Okay, it's your turn. Matt.
Oh, that was easy. I am Chantel B. You can find me at Chantel B on Twitter. You can also find me here tomorrow, my time. No.
Wednesday, U.S. time.
Wednesday. Tomorrow's Wednesday, my time.
Wednesday,
Australian
U.S. time,
time.
Thursday, Australia time.
Right. Okay. You can find me here in around 48 hours playing a new game. And you can find me also here on Saturday and Sunday. You can find me here. I don't know what my schedule is anymore. I need help. You can find me here a lot. Just look at my Twitter. I'll tell you when things are happening. I'm not playing my normal D&D game on Saturday morning. So that's a heads up to everyone.
And Matt.
Hi, Orcish1_83. That's me.
For now.
Watch me Friday, because I'm gonna be Hawk on The Stars That Bind. What's better than that?
Hawk is one
Cool.
of my favorite characters you've ever played. So arguably nothing. Diana, as our guest, you get the biggest slot besides me because it's my channel to pimp what you want to pimp. And if you don't like that word, you can just plug what you want to plug. That's up to you.
Okay. I'm Diana. I'm on Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, and all things making tabletop related jokes and funnies at Super Dylan, which is spelled there. You can find me Saturday, 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, running the 4th session of our playtest of Neverland. So you will see me there playing Captain Hook and Pan and other familiar characters that you might want to see. You can also find on iTunes and Google Play and Stitcher and all things the new podcast that I'm on with Corey, D and Diapers. It is called Vice and Villainy, and it is basically my favorite murder, but taking place in the Forgotten Realms. It is a true crime podcast in the Forgotten Realms. So you can find me doing that, and then I don't know, just
will you do me a
that's it.
favor?
Yeah.
And when you leave after postmortem, will you tweet about both of those things, and then Do Respite will retweet them?
Sure. Thank you.
Welcome. I'm Eric Taylor. Do Respite is my thing, my baby, my project, my passion, whatever you want to call it. There's a lot of them. It's all about telling stories, and that's kind of what we did here tonight. It's what we do Wednesdays, Saturdays. We do it a lot. Check the website. It'll tell you when we do it. I'm running them all. But tonight was Storyteller Studio. Wednesday night, new game, Eternium Gate, returning group of people. You have Chantel, you have Vera, you have the one and only Deep Frito that everybody knows and loves. You have the wonderful Jamie, and you have Jeffrey, who played such a great meathead in Shadow of the Cone. It's going to be, I'm really excited for it. Yeah, I'm excited. Friday, Stars That Bind is back, and then it will be on an every other week rotation from there. Saturday, Somerset City, and there may be a one-shot on Sunday. It's in discussion. We'll let you know later in the week. But for now, I've been Eric, and for Chantel, for Sarah, for Matt, and for the lovely Diana, thanks for joining us on Storyteller Studio. We will see you next time. And also, Diana, you're welcome back whenever you want to be back. I just want the audience to know that. Good night, good luck, and take care. Bye, everybody.